Judges chapter 9. Is there anyone still looking? Please say wait. So I need your attention to the scriptures as we read Judges chapter 9. When you're there, please say amen.
Amen.
Judges chapter 9 reads, And Abimelech, the son of Jerubbaal, went to Shechem unto his mother's brethren, and communed with them, and with all the family of the house of his mother's father, saying, Speak, I pray you, in the ears of all the men of Shechem, whether it's better for you either that all the sons of Jerubbaal, which are 70 persons, 70, reign over you, or that one reign over you. Remember also that I am your bone and your flesh. And his mother's brethren spake of him in the ears of all the men of Shechem, and all these words, and their hearts inclined to follow Abimelech, for they said, He is our brother. And they gave him 70 pieces of silver out of the house of Baal-berith, wherewith Abimelech hired vain and light persons, which followed him scum. And he went unto his father's house at Ophrah, and slew his brethren, the sons of Jerubbaal, being 70 persons, upon one stone, which means in one swoop. Notwithstanding, yet Jotham, the youngest son of Jerubbaal, was left, for he hid himself. And all the men of Shechem gathered together in all the house of Millo, and went and made Abimelech king by the plains of the pillar that was in Shechem. And when they told it to Jotham, he went and stood in the top of Mount Gerizim, and lifted up his voice and cried, and said unto them, Hearken unto me, ye men of Shechem, that God may hearken unto you. Listen. The trees went forth on the time to anoint a king over them. And they said unto the olive tree, Reign over us. But the olive tree said unto them, Should I leave my fatness, wherein by me they honor God and man, and go to be promoted over the trees? And the trees said to the fig tree, Come thou and reign over us. And the fig tree said unto them, Should I forsake my sweetness and my good fruit, and go be promoted over the trees? Then said the trees unto the vine, Come thou and reign over us. And the vine said unto them, Should I leave my wine, which I cheereth God and man, and go to be promoted over the trees? Then said all the trees unto the bramble, Come thou and reign over us. Lastly, and the bramble said unto the trees, If in truth ye anoint me king over you, then come and put your trust in my shadow. And if not, let fire come out of the bramble and devour the cedars of Lebanon. My discourse before you this afternoon is, be careful what you ask for. You may be seated. Be careful what you ask for. When you pick up the book of Judges, you are receiving a book that sits in the second spot among 12 books in the Old Testament, known as the books of history. You have the book of Samuel that was spoken of from last week or a week before last message, when I dealt with you concerning the ideal of what our country and the world is actually undergoing. It is my exercise before you this morning to continue the thought, but instead of it being how long, I simply want to address you from the thought of be careful what you ask for. For the old adage said, for you just might get it. Amen. As we have read here in the book of Judges, we find that we have the person in the form of Jerubbaal. Bible students should know that previously the most notable name for Jerubbaal is actually a most notable person by the name of Gideon. Gideon and Jerubbaal are one and the same person. Amen. You read earlier and you will find out that they named Gideon Jerubbaal because of what the name Jerubbaal means, which means contender of Baal. For you know that when Gideon came into power as one of the judges of Israel, he had a question before God because God had chosen him from a family that was low among the population of the Israelites, and he was the least within that family. And so he asked God, if you truly want me to lead this group of army, then do me a solid. Here is the test. And Bible students will know that this is where he laid the fleece down and said, God, if you want me to lead, then put dew on the fleece, but nowhere else on the ground, and I will lead. God answered his request, and when he woke up, he found dew that was on the fleece, which means simply moisture, but nowhere else on the ground. Then he said, well, you know what, God, I appreciate you doing that, but can I ask you one more thing? If you really want me to lead the people, then will you put fleece everywhere on the ground, the dew? Will you put dew everywhere else on the ground except the fleece? And God, the next morning, had dew on all the ground, Nate, except the spot of the fleece. And that's how Gideon knew that God had chosen him. And he proceeded to go throughout the area and tear down the idols of Baal and tear down the altars offered up to Ashtaroth. And so when the people saw what he had done, they wanted to kill him. And his father stepped up and said, wait a minute. You're trying to do Baal's job, the God that you serve? If my son has offended Baal, let Baal answer for himself. What are you all doing? If he's a God, he can handle my son. And from that became his new name, Jerubbaal, because his father stopped them from killing Gideon. Because if God or if Baal wanted Gideon dead, then a God should be able to handle the task. And so they left Jerubbaal alone. And Gideon went on to do what you most know him for. He led an army of 32,000 men against an army of the Midianites of 135,000. And God reduced that number of 32,000 on Gideon's side down to 300. And from 300, Gideon defeated an army of 135,000. Why? Because God had chosen him. Israel goes on to live under peace for 40 years. Now comes our story. Abimelech is a son of Gideon. Not born to a wife, but born to a concubine, which is our Old Testament language for modern